Why don't we resume with the council questions where we left off earlier? Professor Tate.
Is Route 69 a state scenic highway?
Not in this area, no.
Are there any town scenic roads in the area?
Yes, there are two. If you look up near the north end of Walrod's Lake, near View 4.
Those two R's up there?
Yes, they're down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those are town scenic
Brooks
roads.
Road and Downs Road.
How far away are they from the site?
Photo 4 is 9,540 feet from the site, almost 2 miles.
Looking at photographs 8, 9, 10, and 11. Looking at photograph 8, what trailhead is that reference to? There's view 8. What trail?
That is the Balden's Brook Trail.
Walden Brook Trail. And 9, what trail is that? That's
Regional Water Authority Trail,
and that was T02.
02.
T02. And the other one was T01.
01.
CLMP's right away. CLMP does not like you to put things on their 345 towers. How about the 3115 towers? Have you put any power mounts on those? And are there 115 power lines near this site? You're going to look into that?
That's correct.
Okay. In a right away that the CLB has control over, that they're not using for towers, would they let you put a tower in the right of way that is not interfering with their power lines? And add this to your list. In other words, if it's not necessary for the safety of the power line, is there space in the things that they would let you use or not?
We will ask them that question. The one example I have, which we're working on, which is not in the docket before the council, is a situation where we're not in the right of way, but we're on CLMP land adjacent to their right of way, and we are proposing a tower with their permission in that situation.
We, of course, you have to, but even if it's not adjacent, but can you use the right of way for your tower if it doesn't interfere with their use of it?
I'm going to ask the question and find out if that's possible.
Are you aware of the tower in Cheshire that they mentioned?
Not specifically, but if you look at Scott on board.
Yeah, it's right on the Hampton-Cheshire border.
It's a 345 kV line? And is there a power mount on it?
Yes, that was the one that was built prior to going in
I
on.
thought that was Hampton.
It's right on the border.
So it's the same one?
Yeah, I believe so. If you look from the left, it's one.
Where's Johnson Road? Is that within the area that we have RF coverage?
Borrow your atlas. Just make sure we know what Johnson.
map here, pretty much it's almost at the intersection of routes 313 and 243, which are fronting the Woodbridge Country Club. We have a cell site on the Woodbridge Country Club. It's not shown on this because it's not.
It would be redundant.
Yes. Yeah, it would be very much too close.
That's all my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Tate. Mr. Galvansky.
Thank you, Chairman. I have just a handful of questions. One is there a historic district in that stretch of the Litchfield Turnpike?
No, there's not.
Is that stretch of road that, I guess if I'm looking at your visual impact assessment, the stretch of road that has got the year-round and seasonal visibility, is that a scenic road right in that area?
No, it's not.
Okay. I did have a question in regards to the Trail TO3. Bishop West Trail. That appears to go extremely close to the tower location per this map.
That's correct.
How far is that trail actually from the site?
I'm not sure, but we can verify that with the landlord.
Okay, because it does appear, and maybe you can confirm this, because there's the location marking kind of covers it, but it looks like there would be both seasonal and year-round visibility from that trail, at least where it looks like it kind of makes a curve to the, it looks like a north-south and it curves over to the northwest.
Yeah, we do show that on the visual site map. I'm not sure if you can see it on 11/17, but there is some, as you just turn that corner in the vicinity of the tower, there will be some seasonal and year-round.
The Lake Dawson and Lake Watrous seems like the tower would be visible from a majority of those surface water bodies. Are those open to recreation?
I believe since there are water reservoirs, portable water reservoirs, they're not open to recreation.
Okay. Just as a sort of a style comment, it's easier for me to look at this when you have, it seems like you have the appropriate areas marked by boxes instead of the property limits highlighted in different colors. So I'm not sure if that's something you could do in the future. But, you know, just looking at West Rock Ridge, I know there's a state park on top there, and you know, it's nice to see the outlines of the different open space parcels, town, or local or state. So I don't know if in the future if you can get that data overlay.
We'll look into that.
Okay, thank you.
One moment, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Someone tonight had mentioned that the New England Cement, I guess, company kiln and quarry, you have it located on the, I guess if you want to call it the treatment plant area on your map. Someone had mentioned a structure that was at the corner of Litchfield Turnpike and Dillon Road. I did see that as I drove up Dillon. Is that a different historic kiln?
I believe that is different.
Okay.
We didn't have it listed. We didn't find it listed in National Historic.
Okay. But, so there is a kiln where you have it.
Excuse me. I couldn't hear all the noise.
Could you make sure of the location, because someone described it as across the street essentially?
Yes.
Just to make sure, because that would put it on the same side of the road, fairly contiguous to the property.
one of the issues we addressed in our memorandum, and I tried to get a witness here today from Lottery Group, but they're from out of state. In the report, I'm sorry, in the new reports themselves, there's additional documentation, I believe it's on tab 5, which has a map.
Sorry.
And if you look, it's about halfway back, and it's in the top of the pages. I think it's before those photos. It's in the project itself, between what's called attachment 8. You see the NT submission package at the top.
Yeah, I see a photo 9, it says view of New England Cement Company film and quarry.
If you move back from where you are a few pages, so it's the front of the document, there should be a black and white USGS map.
Yes.
Yes. This is the report that was done by our consultant, shared with the City Historic Preservation Office. And that one in that shaded area, that's the location of the National Register kiln, and that is part of the filtration plant regional water property that we talked about. If there are other areas that comments were made on, that's separate in something else.
Okay.
It's not documented for purposes of research.
Okay. Okay, could you just make sure that is the site?
We will do that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Basco, I see that at the, on, I guess, the Blue Trail on West Rock Ridge, there would be seasonal views from the majority of it, and then a couple areas where there would be year-round. How would you characterize that view?
Probably the best way to characterize the views is if you look at view 10 in the view shed. You can see that the tower would be visible from portions of that, both seasonal and year-round portions of that trail. And all those views will be similar in that they'll have the background, the backdrop will be the higher part of the bridge that you'll be looking at. At certain times of the year, it would be, we'll have the year-round and also the seasonal, but that's pretty much the 10 and 11 are very similar views, and that's really all those views along that trail. And you can also, from those areas, and you can see that in those two views, you can see the power lines and some of the other features that are out along that bridge.
I have one question in regards to, it's been called a few things, but I believe it's the Shepherd Farm Ridge Park, or the open space parcel, I believe that the town purchased with others, Land Trust and others, in 2006. And if I go to C01, behind tab 3, is that parcel in the top left corner, if you want to say the, I guess, southwest of the proposed tower site? It says Town of Woodbridge?
Yes, it is.
That is the parcel, okay. If I stay in that same part of the application, if I open up C02, there's a layout of the access road and the ultimate, if you want to call it, compound. It appears to me that the site is pretty steep, and that based on just what I see here, there's quite a bit of cutting and filling and quite a bit of work that's going to need to be done. I guess my question to you is, what standard will you build that road to?
Standard in what regards?
Well, the road itself, the design of the road, what would you use for your design of the road itself, and then if drainage structures were needed, how would you, what would you, I mean, I know you always say you're going to install erosion controls pursuant to the Connecticut guidelines, but what about stormwater management? What about the roadway? I'm just wondering, when we see a D&M, what standards are you going to use to design?
The stormwater management would be per the stormwater quality manual.
Okay.
And what we're looking at doing, we've already talked about, but we're going to further defining at the end, as you mentioned. We'll maintain as best we can the natural flow of stormwater, which obviously comes down that hill. It may be necessary in a couple of those. We show swale ditches in there that take the stormwater, for instance, in the compound area, that coming out into the compound area, there's a swale that'll take it around to the left and then dump it out on that natural slope. On the other side, we'll be taking it around the roadway and dumping it out. There is an area within the loop, if you will, that we're going to take a look at. It's not a big area, and we have to take a look, and there may be necessary for a cross culvert or two to get that water across and back onto that natural drainage down to.
Okay. So what are you going to use to determine whether you need a cross culvert and how large it would be and how the swale, what size the swales would be?
We design everything using DOT's highway design manual, drainage for headwater, tailwater design, and culvert size.
Okay, so you would actually run calculations
We'll be doing a drainage study during the day.
Okay. And I have one last question on this map. This is the first time that I've seen us, and I'm only have a short tenure here, but we've sort of gone cross-country with our utilities. And it seems that would open up an extra 20-foot wide corridor through the property with extra disturbance. And usually we see it sort of go up and inside the road. Is that because the road is such a switchback in this case, or?
That is the case. And what we looked at, and we worked with Kevin Day on this, is it's kind of the shortest distance. And if you look at the trees that we've identified over 6-inch diameter, it's a location that's it doesn't affect any of those larger trees. And it'll be underground, so there is an easement shown there for maintenance purposes. But once it regrows,
So it's going to be a permanent cleared
the utilities will be installed underground, so it'll just naturally grow back over.
So they won't come through and cut
Unless
any vegetation?
Unless they need to maintain it and go back in there and replace any portions of it.
Okay, because I mean, in construction, you don't want to go, right up, straight up a contour. You want to work with contours. So this is pretty much as, I know it's a straightest shot. Doesn't seem to be potentially the best for post-stabilization.
We typically don't have future maintenance problems with the installations of utilities. So our hope is that it'll grow back naturally and then you won't know they're there. And the only reason you would is if in fact something happened occurred that we had to go back in there. But typically that's not where our maintenance issues occur.
Okay. And then quickly, what are the slopes, proposed slopes? Are they 2-to-1 slopes? I mean, I quickly did it. They look somewhere around 2-to-1.
The cut and fill? Yes. Yeah, those are 2-to-1.
Okay, and they seem pretty long, actually. Are you guys proposing erosion control blankets for these areas, or?
We'll show that as part of our sedimentation and erosion control. Certainly, we'll after the construction, before the vegetation takes root, we'll be showing some type of erosion control blankets. Absolutely, on those cut slopes. Absolutely.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Galabowski. Maybe I could just follow up on the questions you asked with regard to, Mr. Fisher's going to find out exactly where it is, but if I look on, if I can tab 5, I'm looking at the map, which is one I couldn't find, but it shows the one New England Cement Company kiln and quarry. It looks like it's on the opposite side of the street from 69, so it's behind the sewage treatment plant, right?
No.
Then where is it?
I'm Dylan and Litchfield. This is where the tower is supposed to be. It's on Litchfield Turnpike in the corner of Dillon and Litchfield Turnpike.
Across the road.
So I'm hearing that it should be on the same, I'm hearing that it should be on the same side
As the tower.
as the tower
Yes,
at the intersection of Dillon
yes.
and Litchfield Turnpike.
Correct.
Okay, so you're gonna find out exactly and get me exactly where it is. Or is it across the street behind the sewage treatment plant? Or is it just all owned by the same person? And so therefore it's assumed that it's right there smack in the middle.
We're gonna follow up and find out and get the actual kiln area as best we can identified. We actually, just so you, Chairman, on this particular issue, today we pulled the listing and there's no address and there's no specified location. So we're gonna try to pinpoint it on a map as best we can, but to the best of our ability, this is part of the
Yeah,
regional water authority.
and maybe the Historical Society might have a map because they must know where it is. It's surrounded by a big chain link fence, somebody must, right?
Picture.
Let's hear it.
It's very close to the Gulf
And then, with regard to that, then, in either way, it's got to be a considerable distance from the tower site to Dillon Road. How far would it be to Dillon Road? Looks like at least it was a long walk. It's got to be at least a quarter mile.
The information we had from Honore was just within a half mile from the site.
Okay. And how do you propose to, if you were to receive permission to put up this tower, are you going to do any blasting?
No, typically we stay away from blasting for obvious reasons, but it's also, it's cheaper to just chip, to take out a piece of hydraulic equipment where we just chip
Right.
what we need to chip away. And it
So
doesn't
you're not
have
going to do
that.
any blasting?
No.
In the past experience in constructing towers which the company has had, have there been quakes or tremors or any sort of fault lines occurring from the use of that kind of equipment extending a half mile away?
I don't recall that. I would say no.
So it's the preferred means of purchasing, of building is exclusive of using any blasting and to use a drill chipper, something that digs it out, right?
Right, and when I talk about chipping, that's for the access roadway, the completion of the access roadway. If there is ledge or bedrock in the compound area, then we wouldn't be blasting out a big foundation, we would be drilling into the bedrock, and we'd be securing the tower into the bedrock.
And
Rather
how
than like a building, sometimes they have to go in and blast out the foundation.
Right.
No, we would drill that in it to maintain the tower.
And we would secure, so you'd have a concrete base secured to the bedrock with giant screws?
Drill shed, basically drill shed, yes.
Great, thank you. That's obviously one of the concerns, at least two of the concerns which you raised. And I just wanted to follow up since Mr. Golembuski had mentioned those. Mr. Walensky?
Just a questions. If this council decided in a positive way in this tower, and maybe Mr. Blevins or Mr. Wells could use flush-mounted antennas in this, and how would they affect it?
Well, we could use flush mounts, but then we need two locations on the tower, so with three users, it would increase the overall height of the tower by.
Now, the proposal is 167 feet, am I correct on that?
That's correct.
And then where would the other mounting be? One would be at 167, where would the other be? Would it be 10 feet below that, or just right below?
Well, if each one did 20 feet, it'd be right below it, because they would be mounted at 150, plus 20 would be 170, so that would be.
How would that affect your, somebody else is looking around this tower at 160 feet or 157 feet? How would that affect that other potential carrier?
Both Verizon Wireless and Pocket Communications expressed an interest in this site, both at a minimum height of 150 feet. Verizon in particular, much like AT&T, has multiple bands to accommodate, so they would also need two locations. So if you looked at a Verizon minimum height of 140 feet, and then they need two spots, you're looking at 150 for Verizon to accommodate those two slots, then Pocket at 160. They would, because of their limited bandwidth, they would only need one spot.
Can they both operate with flush mounted antennas?
Particularly for Verizon, is very tough for them these days, and much of the way AT&T's headed with the advent of the 4G and the LTE implementation. There's some nuances with that technology that make it very tough for flush mounts. And, you know, again, you need 2 spots at a minimum. LTE, not solidified yet, but you could potentially need a 3rd spot for LTE or 4G technology. So with a flush mount in this particular location, you had to probably raise the height of this tower to a minimum 10 feet, if not 20 or 30 feet.
In other words, you're
to
saying
accommodate everybody.
if you went to flush mounted, it would supposedly have to be a higher tower?
Potentially, yes.
What about
To
the
accommodate the
Mr. Wells, just refresh my recollection.
LTE, long-term
Lord ceiling?
long-term evolution data. It's basically the 4G, it's where everybody's headed.
That's all the stuff that goes into my BlackBerry, right?
Yes, and enhanced products in the future. And because of the limited bandwidth, actually, even voice will be pumped over that because there's so much demand that you have to go to 4G.
Okay, thank you.
What
Also,
about
Verizon.
What about T-arms?
I think that would be okay. I don't know who we have that could address the T. I would just worry about the number of antennas associated with the T-arm, and that's a little bit outside my.
It's okay for us, we've done them before for AT&T, but now that I think about it, Verizon's been doing 12 antennas lately, so I don't know what their configuration is.
Are you saying that they could not, Verizon could not use T-arms? They could use T-arms.
They could use T-arms, but I'm not sure that they, well, what we would have to do to make them flush mounts with 12 antennas. They'd essentially be taking up 3 meters instead of 2.
But you can
I
say-
think I'd have to, well, maybe we could look at that a little closer and talk to Verizon about that. I'm not quite sure of the answer on the T-arms because of the LTE stuff.
Okay. Well, and the last question, I'm just curious, Mr. Wells and Mr. Blevins, with the advent of more people using cell phones and capacity, some of these towers be getting to capacity, is that going to mean additional towers throughout the next future years, 3, 4, 5 years? Or can these towers that are there handle the capacity?
That's part of the 4G evolution is to handle that capacity. Will there be more towers? Certainly, you know, there are more towers proposed in the build plan to accommodate the current use and coverage. You know, clearly, we have coverage issues remaining even in this town. Where the increased usage itself currently, I believe, doesn't in itself necessitate more towers because that increased demand is currently offset by the fast increases in technology and the ability to utilize a lot of, fully utilize that spectrum better. A year, 2 years from now, the technology grows so fast, I hesitate to make a prediction, but right now, I don't think it's not a driver for increased tower usage. The driver for more towers currently is the demand, you know, and some of the safety concerns that you heard tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Walensky. Actually, I think Dr. Bell has a follow-up to that with regard to the AT&T and Verizon issues.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just because we've been talking just now about Verizon, and earlier you were also talking about Verizon, who apparently has indicated interest, but I don't believe we have anything in the record that's actually a letter from Verizon. Verizon isn't here. Can we get something of that sort?
The interest I can describe to you, whether or not we can get something written for the record, but the evidence is Mr. Wells' testimony and our testimony. We asked for a letter. I spoke with counsel for Verizon. Earlier today, there were emails exchanged between the market leads for AT&T and Verizon about this issue. The RF engineers within Verizon, as part of that email chain, shared information, which was shared with Mr. Wells, so that he could testify and provide this information to you. The information we received is that this is a longer-term site in their build plan for budget reasons, which is why they didn't intervene, why They haven't really submitted a letter, so I'm not sure we'll be able to get a letter, but the evidence that Tony Wells has given you is from Verizon directly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dell. Mr. Esty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This view analysis says the tower is proposed at 170 feet.
Correct.
Maybe you could briefly educate me about a scenic trail going over the Shepherd's property. Is that something that the Shepherd or the property owner grants, maybe not just the Shepherds, but the property owner grants, and they can take it back anytime they want?
That's that same trail, T03, that came up a couple of times, that we're going to check and confirm who owns, maintains, based on some previous lessons. We'll bring that information back, I don't know that.
You don't know if any of it is on the subject property?
I do not know that, no.
Okay.
You're also going to look into who maintains it.
Microphone, please.
Who owns it, who maintains it, and is it on the town's recreational plan, and is it open to the public to be used?
That's correct.
Yes, all that's business.
That's correct.
Thank you. Following up on Mr. Kalinowski's question, if there's trouble with an underground service, do they always need to excavate, or do they just pull another wire through the same conduit?
As AT&T policy, building a new tower, we'll run multiple conduits from the site down, so if there's a foul up in any of them, we'll just run a new line. We don't ever plan on opening up the trench again for power or telco. We throw extra conduits in.
Thank you. Is there, tell me what possible configuration would be, what configuration would be possible with a 160-foot tower? Given what you understand to be the interest by other carriers, assuming there's flexibility on whether they're flush mount or T-arms or something else.
I have to look at the T-arm issue, make sure I'm not misspeaking for Verizon. At 160 feet, given the interest expressed by both Verizon and Pocket Communications, flush mount arrangement would not meet the coverage objectives. So the two remaining, potentially for the T-arms, which I need to look into, the proposed configuration and a tree type installation.
Let's start with 160 feet and still wanting to get 3 carriers on there. Is that possible? 60, 50, and 40.
If we use full platforms, we can certainly get all 3 on there, and I assume, see, they won't talk for Verizon. I don't know what they want to do. They have a much larger antenna requirement as of late.
If Mr. Blevins, if we assume that AT&T can go at 160 feet, then we could put either Verizon or Pocket at 150, and then either Verizon or Pocket at 140, assuming a full array configuration, either the tree, potentially the T-arms, or the proposed configuration.
And at 140 feet, what is the usability of the pole? I know there's a better word. Viability of that 140 feet for any. Not the whole pole, but at the 140-foot level. Is there any viable antenna placement at 140 feet?
Yeah, both Verizon and T-Mobile expressed interest at 140 feet.
And how about
Or I'm sorry, not I said T-Mobile, I meant Pocket.
So they have expressed interest at 140 feet and up.
Correct.
And that would be, so one or the other, get there at 150, and then you would go at 160. What's the value of the tower space at 130 feet to anyone?
I can't answer that conclusively because they require, for example, Sprint would be my next logical, or Sprint or T-Mobile would be my next logical choices at PCS frequencies. Certainly, given what we know about the other carriers' interest in AT&T, as you go down below 140, there's certainly some concern. But also, as I mentioned before, in the town of Woodbridge, it's a very tough area to get a site. And while 130 may not be ideal, if there is a need, and I believe there is for the other carriers like Sprint and T-Mobile, because I don't know where else they would get coverage from, if there is a need, they would, again, supposition, and I don't have authority to speak for them, but I would expect that they would go on the site, even with some coverage challenges, and figure out long term how to make it work.
So it is possible that a tower at 150 feet could account, you would have
Probably require a second tower somewhere else.
for someone else some other time. But for this tower, you could get 3 carriers. It sounds to me like you're saying you'll have interest in 130, 40, and 50 or 3 carriers at 150 foot tower.
Again, you can keep, we can keep trying to push it down and incrementally do it. What I'm saying is that as you push it down, the problem becomes more and more aggravated, and it's a trade-off as with anything. If it was a pure engineering concern, I would suggest we build it at 190 feet, and so that there's a lot more flexibility. We address co-location going downstream. We can accommodate the higher frequency people like Clearwire. It's not a pure engineering exercise. We have to take visibility into aspect, and it's all a compromise. Will carriers take it if you keep pushing them down? Yes, but it creates more and more of a problem, and you're just delaying the ultimate problem in trying to move around. But ultimately, you have to make a decision. Either you say, all right, we're going to make that compromise, and we're never going to fill these other areas, or we need to provide that coverage. Like I said, Woodbridge is very tough. You kind of take what you can get, but if you're trying to provide the service, you need the height.
It was unfortunate I did not hear from any of the tower opponents whether they preferred one tall tower or several shorter towers. If you were to get some information from the town on that specific question, you'd be glad to share it with us.
But even if they prefer, it doesn't mean we can get property.
I'm using the assumption of this site for a short tower or a tall tower, with the possibility, if it's a short tower, that there are other tower proposals in the wings.
Yeah, and again,
If that's what I understood you to say. Short tower means it's got to be more towers somewhere.
right, somewhere, and as you go down in height, you're more, obviously, as you go down in height, you have more limited coverage. Now you have, and with limited coverage, you also have more limited placement. As Mr. Blevins testified earlier, they've been working in this town for a long time, and yeah, it sounds good in theory, maybe go lower and replace this one with 3 shorter sites, but you have to assume you can get them somewhere. And then if we talk 3 shorter sites for this particular carrier, now you're shorter, you're closer to the tree line, even more limited coverage, and now you would need multiple sites. Now we're talking 3 locations, but perhaps multiple sites in each location. And, again, it's all a trade-off. You decide you need it, it's a hard choice.
These are hard choices, and if the public officials would, if you could get the public officials to step up and divulge their preference, it would be helpful.
Oh, yes, with their preference along with viable options for fulfilling those preferences. Certainly, one shorter tower is the preference, is a viable preference, you know. I think we need to solve both.
I think the officials have heard our concerns. If they wish to reply, they certainly can put something in the record before.
The last thing I have is, if at 160 feet, do you have a view shed view, or is that something you can provide easily? Not necessarily with all these other, just with the red marks on them.
The best way to get an idea of the visual, if you look at the after photos where you can actually see the tower,
I find this presentation easier than this random selection of visual photos.
Okay.
So if that is something that is not too difficult to provide, I'd like to get it at 160
What are you
feet.
referring to?
This figure VS1 assumes 170 feet. I'm looking for one that assumes 160 feet.
If all you're doing is knocking the 10 feet off the tower, there won't be really any appreciable change in the view shed analysis.
It might be to your advantage, or it would be to my advantage if you could provide that, if it's not too much trouble. I'll leave it to you to decide whether you want to provide that. I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Jessie. Mr. Lynch?
Mr. Chairman, my only question involved the grading around the site itself, especially to the east side, but I think Mr. Bascom, in his comments to Mr. Golubowski, kind of answered that. I would only add that if this does go to a D&M plan, Mr. Bascom, you could be very detailed about the grading around, especially around my concerns, the compound, especially to that east side where it goes down the hill.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Mr. Fisher, is it possible to make this into a tree, silo, something of that nature?
Certainly a tree. That's something we said that we could do in this particular instance. I defer to the construction folks on the silo and what that would be like visually or to construct it.
Mr. Baskin?
I would just make a comment that the silo at that height above the tree line would be more obtrusive, I believe, than a monopole tower as proposed. And I made comments previously on the tree. Once again, several, or the majority of the views along Litchfield Turnpike are above the existing tree line, so it really doesn't do a lot to hide, providing a tree tower doesn't do a lot to hide the tower that's been proposed.
I'd like to add to the administrative notice the silo tower on Lockwood Farm in New Haven, which was used for, and I'd like to also verify its height. But in Hampton, whatever, it's on Whitney Avenue, it's off of Lockwood Avenue.
Is that what you worked on with Senator Crisco?
I think we have a photograph maybe in our book.
It's in the administrative notice in the sense that it's in the photo book right now.
And does the photo book indicate how tall that tower is?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
well, then
sir.
I would draw your attention.
I don't remember, but it says the height.
Draw everybody's attention.
Yeah.
Mr. Ashley?
Mr. Baskin, just before we broke this up, I meant to ask you this question. You had indicated that the tower be designed for a G level rather than F level, is that correct?
Yes.
Would you explain what G is and what F is? What do they mean, practically speaking?
It may be better if we provide that information later.
You're designing it for 85 miles an hour wind, is that the idea?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the standards are.
Throw that in the stuff.
The wind speed standard doesn't change, but some of the other structures.
That was the I think it's going to get lost in the shuffle unless we identify what it is.
Fair enough. We'll do that.
Attorney Fisher, final question. Much has been made of Ms. Shepherd. Is there anything that she should share with me at this time?
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Shepherd had done us a favor as a tenant to answer questions earlier. I was not aware that she wanted to provide some statement to the council and have an opportunity to be heard on that. She did express an interest in being able to be heard this evening, so if you would indulge her.
I can also type it up.
Why don't I let you do this, Ms. Shepherd, if you would, as the person who runs the oldest farm around here left, why don't you give me a brief statement, and then I'll let you send something in, okay?
Hello, I'm the property owner of the proposed cell tower site, which is located at Shepherd Farm in Woodbridge. I'd just like to reiterate what I had stated before, which was printed in the Amity Observer last week in the editorial section. There actually is a need for a tower in this area. Another tower in the general area would take care of dead zones up Route 69 going into Bethany, all the way down to the middle of Downs Road in Bethany, out over to Route 63 off Apple Tree Lane, and extending down Route 67, which is also off Route 63. There was at least one incident that I can tell you about where cell phone coverage was needed and unavailable to my fiance last summer. When he couldn't get through to 911 on Route 69 in Bethany, a motorcyclist had taken a spill on 69 in Wooding Hill Road, which is probably about a mile north of me. Dana was passing by in his truck and stopped to help him. It was clear the man needed an ambulance, his leg was broken, and he and the motorcycle were up against the guardrail. Dana had to leave the scene because it was a cell phone dead zone, and he was trying to call 911 for the man. There's a hill across the street. He ran across the street, up into the woods, up the hill, and kept trying 911 until he could get a signal, which he finally did. I can only cite this one case, but I'm sure there are other cases where calls were dropped or not able to be made at all because of all the dead zones in those areas. You guys can probably tell, I don't mind where the cell phone is going, the cell tower is going on my property. It is going on a high piece that we don't use for phoning and probably never would in the foreseeable future. Until last year, we couldn't even get up this hill with any type of truck or tractor. As you saw, the hill was too steep. We did put a road in right before AT&T contacted us, ironically enough, so we could get some of the dead wood on the ground down to use as firewood. Also, I do believe that if the tower does go up, that within a year, passing motorists probably wouldn't even give it a second look, just like I already I try not to pay attention to the UI towers that were redone right behind me just a couple of years ago. It is true what that one lady said from town. One of the nicest things for me here over at my farm is that with the extra income from the cell tower, I can fix up my historic barn, which is not a registered historic barn, neither is my house. That is a pretty area, that is a pretty street, I like living there. The first thing I thought when AT&T came to me was, this is good, I can use the income from the cell tower to preserve my historic farm. The barn itself was moved from across the street in the early 1900s, and I would like to see it stay where it is and in good repair. I would like that one kiln that keeps being discussed on Dillon and the corner of Dillon and 69. If you guys ever get a chance, you might want to take a look at it. It's crumbling. It's already falling apart, and somebody erected a fence around it because it was already crumbling and falling apart. I don't know if that's the historic structure that people are referring to, but
Are we going to get a picture of it?
Later on? Yes.
If that's the one that people are referring to, it's crumbling already. I don't know. I would just wanted to address some of the things that the Conserve Woodbridge group stated. The tower would be in front of existing UI towers atop a steep hill. The 35 acres that the town and the other agencies are kicked in to buy is south of where the tower is going. Granted, if you're coming from the Merritt and look up Route 69, you will see the tower, but if you're right in front of the farm or right in front of the Darling house, I don't think the tower will have an impact on the views over there. And other people stated there are towers on West Rock right across the street from me. The tower itself, it's not near the historic Darling house. The historic Darling house is south of me. The tower is right near my farm. I consider the historic part of my farm to be the barn, which is in the flat area. I don't consider up on the steep hill part of the historic part of my farm. It was also interesting that the Conserve Woodbridge people in their note out to residents, they wrote, "We object to allowing a private company and a private individual to undermine the beauty and historic value of a site that Woodbridge citizens spent tax dollars to preserve." Nobody spent tax dollars on preserving the farm that's left. I'm doing that. I'm maintaining that farm and keeping it there, hopefully. And again, I would like to use some of the rental income from the cell towers to continue attempting to preserve the farmland. It's the burden is on AT&T to show that they have looked into alternative sites and all that other stuff. Well, that's what I have prepared. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you very much.
One moment, please. Thank you.
I believe that's all and one last question. Maybe you can answer me this, Mr. Baskin. I have this vision from listening to how the tower will cast a shadow across the valley like a giant sundial. Is that possible from the height at which it's located in the direction?
No, it's not.
Okay, so if I'm at the Dowling house, I'm not going to have that ticking away.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Phelps, do we have anything else we can accomplish today?
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that the applicant's attorney, Mr. Fisher, speak to us about what he has in mind in the way of late files.
Mr. Fisher, we've asked you for certain documents. How can you accomplish that?
Yes, there are a number of things that have been raised at tonight's hearing that obviously we need some time to prepare that information, and some of it's under the control of third parties, and we're trying to get that. At this point, on behalf of the applicant, we would like to adjourn the evidentiary component of the proceedings, provide that information to the full council and staff, and then at some point, there may be further questions. I don't know by the information we provide. If there are further questions, we're obviously amenable to a small hearing on those issues back up in New Britain to the extent that you deem them necessary to ask us further questions. We obviously have to get the answers to the questions, and then you'll have to determine if that's necessary, but we'd like to leave that as an open option. At this point, given the statutory timeframes, I have to put on the record a consent, which I'm obviously desirous of, to extend out the timeframe for any decision by the council for purposes of the FCC ruling and even, I think, state statute, and I will follow the correspondence to that effect. So we'd like to be able to answer all of your questions, get all of that information in a supplemental filing, and then have you determine whether you want to have additional cross-examination of us.
Mr. Phelps, will that accomplish our task?
Yes, sir. What we'll do is we'll exchange letters on the extension issue for purposes of FCC. We'll wait to receive what we're going to receive from Mr. Fisher, and then the council will either act to close the evidentiary hearing on a council meeting, or we'll schedule a continuation hearing back in New Britain, one or the other. Thank you, sir.
Very good. Then we'll recess and reconvene at some point in the future to address either the closure or the acceptance and further questions. Okay, is there any objection from the council to that?
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Thank you all very much. Good night.